So, when Sir Philip Game was Governor of New South Wales, he wrote these rather fascinating letters back to England to his mother-in-law, and he said that the things that he'd learned the first thing was that the amount of food you had to eat as part of this job was phenomenal, because every time you appeared at something, it was a lunch and a breakfast and a dinner and a morning tea, and he said the greatest skill he had to develop was being able to move food around on the plate so it looked like he'd eaten it. And he said he hadn't quite got to the point of having to slip food in his pocket, but he was not far off it. So we might have to suggest she has big pockets on her clothes to slip the odd scone when she's really had too much.
Or takes a pet with her everywhere she goes that might graciously tuck up that scone. Look, always a great chat when we have a chat, and thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
That's Emeritus Professor Anne Toomey, who is a Professor of Constitutional Law at the University of Sydney Law School. This is ABC News Radio, Sarah Morris with you. We have some breaking news. An earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 7.5 has struck off southwestern Japan. An evacuation advisory has been issued for Okinawa coastal areas. A tsunami of up to 3 metres expected to reach Japan's southwestern coastline in the next hour or so. We'll keep an eye on that. Also making news, the Australian Financial Complaints Authority says complaints about how banks handle financial distress has risen at 25% in the last year. More than half of the complaints were about a lender's failure to respond to a request for help, which is a breach of national codes. And internal emails reveal a Ballarat gold mine was warned about the risk of a rockfall months before a collapse that killed a 37-year-old miner. Now, the last living survivor of the USS Arizona, the battleship that exploded and sank in the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, well, that last living survivor has died. Lou Conter died this week at his home in Grass Valley, California, at the ripe old age of 102. Dave Kilton is the Public Information Officer at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial in Honolulu.
I'm deeply honoured by this.
That would be our new Governor General. Let's try again. This is David Kilton, the Public Information Officer at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial in Honolulu.
Lou Contour is one of the few survivors of the USS Arizona battleship that took the heaviest loss of life on the morning of December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor was attacked. To help give a little bit of context of how few survived, they called these battleships cities at sea as kind of a little nickname because they had such large crews. So there were over 1,500 servicemen that would have served aboard each of those battleships. And 1,177 members of the just over 1,500-man crew were killed during the attack on Pearl Harbor. So just small numbers survived. What caused the huge loss of life is the bomb that was dropped came down and penetrated the deck of the ship right between the front two main battery guns. And then when it went down, it exploded where it was surrounded by the ammunition stores for those front two guns. And so when that bomb exploded, it also caused the ammunition surrounding it to explode as well. And they figured the magnitude of that, all that explosives going off together was 1/10 of what was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so that intense blast tore through the ship and not only caused the loss of 1,177 members of the crew, but also over 900 of them, because the blast was so big, were never able to be recovered. So a huge number. Basically, the ship that's still under the water is their grave site. So Lou Contour was a quartermaster third class that had joined the Navy in 1939, and he would have, when called to battle stations when the attack started that morning at 8 o'clock, he would have been called to the back decks. So he was almost as far away from that explosion as you could be serving aboard that ship that morning. One of the reasons he would have He has told his story, and one of the things he talks about is the water was coming up, rising, got up above his boots, and they found shortly thereafter that they weren't going to be able to stay on board and had to abandon ship. And so he did abandon the ship that morning and would have spent most of the rest of the day on a small boat helping to pull bodies from the water. Some of those were individuals trying to find safety after abandoning their own ships with heavy, thick fuel that was in the water, and then also burning fuel. They were just trying to find safety. Others were injured individuals that were in the water, and some of those were the fallen that he would have pulled from the water as well.
What an incredible thing to have survived through.
Right, yeah. And he would continue to serve and survive other battles throughout World War II, serving in the Pacific for part of that, and then eventually also moving over to the Atlantic, and then would continue to serve through the Korean War, actually a total of just over 27 years of service for the United States Navy before he retired from the military and would become a real estate developer in California.
Wow, wonderful. And made it all the way through to 102, the last survivor of the USS Arizona. Now, tell me about the significance of his loss now that he is the last one gone.
So one of the things that I'll bring forward as you bring that question to me is that he really saw an importance to connect with the legacy of Pearl Harbor survivors, of World War II survivors, and just telling the story also to help prevent that story wouldn't have to be faced again, and hoping for peace and reconciliation for a future. And one of the things that he committed to do as he got a little bit later into life, and he and his wife Valerie would commit to come to the commemorations every year. So every December 7th, when we would commemorate the anniversary of the attacks, they would be here. And that would continue, them both coming together until her passing in 2016. And then he came on his own up until, from what I understand, 2019 was the last year he was able to come. And then when the COVID pandemic happened, because of the effects of COVID, and then also once we were out of kind of quarantine and things, his own deteriorating health, he wasn't able to attend those last couple years. Although he did make sure to do a virtual recording and pay his respects and show his gratitude and represent in the ways he was able to those that had survived and that were part of this story. Not just here at Pearl Harbor, but the other stories all throughout World War II and the other nations that have been affected by the devastation and tragedy of the war. He wanted to help honor that legacy and their stories as best he could. And one of the things he would say, and it's actually reported saying,